It started with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that follows betrayal. He sat in the cafe, untouched coffee growing cold. She had left without explanation, just vanished. No fight, no closure, just a text. I need space. And for the first time, he didn't chase, not because he didn't care, but because something deeper told him this wasn't his war to fight. He had always been quiet, the type that watched more than he spoke, the type people thought was boring until they actually needed someone who listened. In a world where noise gets mistaken for value, he had learned to find power in stillness. But that day, sitting across from the ghost of someone who once said forever, he questioned it all. Maybe if he had been louder, more assertive, more fun, maybe then she would have stayed. He reached for the coffee. It tasted like ash and regret. But regret doesn't feed you, it drains you. So he walked out into the wind, alone but not lost. Because even in heartbreak, there was a thread of something else, something calmer, like the slow unfolding of truth. What if this wasn't a loss, but a kind of unveiling? What if being quiet wasn't a flaw? What if it was his gift? Most men would panic, fill the void with distractions, calls, blame other women. But he did the opposite. He went home, lit a candle, and sat with the ache. It's in those moments when the world expects you to crumble and you don't, that you begin to meet yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's when you become irresistible. You stop chasing approval. You start becoming presence itself. Let's pause here. Ever noticed how introverts don't seek the spotlight, but when they do speak, people listen? It's not an accident. It's because their words come from still waters, and still waters are deep. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Introverts live this naturally. They rarely perform, they embody. And in a world that rewards performance, embodiment is a rare magnetic force. That's the first reason introverts are attractive. They are rooted in themselves, not in ego, not in show. In essence, you can feel it when they walk into a room. They don't need to prove anything. That not needing is power. One night, months after the breakup, he sat on his apartment floor, books scattered around him, Epictetus, meditations, a few torn journals filled with things he never said aloud. And he wrote something strange. Silence isn't emptiness. It's the sound of the soul preparing to speak. No one had ever told him that his silence could be seen, that in a loud world being quiet was a kind of rebellion, a calm defiance. But deep down he had always known, because when he walks into a room, people relax. He doesn't interrupt. He observes. He listens. And when he speaks, people feel. That's reason number 2. Introverts listen like warriors, not to respond, but to understand. It's magnetic. In a conversation, while everyone else is rehearsing their reply, an introvert is tuning into you. That kind of attention is rare. It's healing. And attractive? God, yes, because attention is the purest form of love. But society calls them too quiet, aloof, hard to read. Truth is, they're just selective with their energy, and that selectivity is their shield. The Stoics called it temperance, knowing when to speak, when to act, and when to withdraw. He's mastered that now, not out of fear, out of strength. Remember that moment when someone really saw you, not for your looks, your charm, or what you could do, but for your presence. It wasn't noisy, was it? It was still, focused, warm. That's the introvert's gift. And the third reason they're irresistibly attractive, they are emotionally sovereign. When chaos erupts, they don't add to it. They anchor themselves. They might feel deeply, but they don't project their storms onto others. They process in solitude, reflect, breathe, while others lash out. Introverts return inward. That's rare and deeply alluring. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Emotional sovereignty is mastery, and mastery attracts. He remembered a moment when a colleague had exploded at him, publicly, harshly, unfairly. The old version of him would have shut down, avoided, fawned, but not this time. He simply looked at the man and said, "I can see you're angry. Let's talk when you're ready to speak, not just react." Then he walked away. That moment haunted people, not because he raised his voice, but because he didn't need to. And that's the fourth reason introverts captivate. They command through calm, not with bravado, but with presence. They don't dominate a room, they ground it. There's a difference. One demands, the other invites. Guess which one women and wise people trust more? There was a woman once, soft-spoken, observant. She worked in the same building, a floor above. Their paths crossed only in elevators and rare late evenings when both stayed too long at the office. She wasn't flashy, didn't flirt, but her eyes lingered longer than necessary. And one evening, as they walked out into the soft orange haze of the city, she said, "You feel like peace. Not you're interesting, not you're hot, not even you're kind, but peace." It caught him off guard because he had spent years thinking he had to be more, louder, sharper, witty, dominant, but peace. That's the fifth reason introverts draw people in. They radiate internal stability. You don't realize how rare that is until you meet someone who has it. Someone who doesn't tremble under pressure, who pauses before reacting, who listens, breathes, and responds with clarity. Someone who doesn't need to prove they're right, because they're secure in not knowing everything. The Stoics would call this ataraxia, a lucid calm, an undisturbed mind. Not indifferent, but grounded, like an oak in a storm. Most people don't know what they're missing until they're in the presence of someone like that. And once they are, they crave it. Not because of drama, but because of the absence of it. Think of the last time someone didn't fill the space with words. They just sat with you, fully. No distractions, no opinions, no rush to fix you, just being. Didn't it feel like a kind of magic? That's not magic. That's depth. And depth is the sixth reason introverts attract without trying. They offer depth in a world drowning in shallow. Small talk bores them. Surface games exhaust them. They crave connection, not attention. Meaning, not performance. So when they give you their time, it's intentional. And when they open up, it's sacred. They won't be the first to text or the loudest in the room, but they will remember the way your voice cracked when you talked about your father. They will notice your hesitation before you said, "I'm fine." And they won't call you out. They'll just offer space for your truth to bloom. That's the kind of energy people don't forget. That's the kind of energy that lingers. One evening, months later, he saw his ex again, not on purpose. She was across the street laughing with someone new. He paused, not to eavesdrop, not to compare, just to observe. And for the first time, he didn't feel lack, or jealousy, or pain. He just felt clear. And it wasn't because he had moved on in the way people like to say. It was because somewhere along the way, he had returned to himself and found that he was enough. That's the final reason, perhaps the most powerful. Introverts possess an inner world that most people never touch, and those who get to glimpse it feel chosen. Not because it's easy to access, but because it's real and sacred. There's a gravity in that, a quiet intensity, a slow burn magnetism that doesn't beg to be noticed, but refuses to be ignored. That's what people mistake as mystery, but it's not mystery. It's just depth, guarded by stillness. You see, attraction isn't about noise, it's about resonance. Two energies either sync or they don't. And introverts don't force that resonance, they wait for it. That patience, that restraint, it's ancient. The Stoics practiced it as a form of respect for self and for others. Don't rush connection, don't chase people, don't build bridges where there is no land on the other side. Let things unfold, and that unfolding becomes irresistibly beautiful when it's not rushed. He now spends his evenings differently, not in loud bars, not swiping endlessly, not chasing validation. He reads, he walks alone, he writes thoughts he doesn't share on social media. And when someone does enter his orbit, he no longer wonders if he's enough, because he knows the truth. The most attractive men are not the ones who seek to be seen, they are the ones who see, and keep seeing long after others look away. There's a bench near the lake where he often sits. No phone, no music, just ripples, wind, the occasional bird that lands nearby without fear. It's become a kind of ritual to return there, to return to himself. The world doesn't reward this kind of slowness, but that's why it's sacred. It's in that space, far from deadlines, likes, and expectations, that you can see clearly. And one evening, as the sun was dissolving into the water, he realized something simple. He no longer wanted to be chased. He no longer needed to chase. He simply wanted to resonate. Because when you are at peace with who you are, you stop confusing attention for affection. You stop needing the noise. You start craving depth, solitude, presence. And that, in a world of constant stimulation, is not just attractive. It's magnetic. It's rare. Think of the last time you met someone who didn't try to win you over. They just existed, fully, authentically. You either felt it or you didn't, but you trusted it. That's the energy introverts carry, grounded, unfabricated truth. They're not sculpted by trends. They don't chase applause. They're carved slowly, by solitude, by thought, by time. And every scar is studied, not hidden. That's not just attractiveness, that's integrity. He once read something from Seneca. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. That used to sound harsh. Now it feels like grace, because the introvert's power doesn't come from being untouched by life, but from being touched deeply and choosing to let it refine them instead of destroy them. Pain turned into perception, loneliness into clarity, silence into strength, all invisible on the surface, but unmistakable when you feel them sit beside you saying nothing, yet anchoring everything. A friend once asked him, "Don't you get lonely being so internal?" He smiled. "No, I get lonely when I can't be." Because for introverts, solitude isn't a prison. It's a return to truth, to clarity, to meaning. They walk alone not because they fear people, but because they respect energy. And that respect shapes everything: how they love, how they speak, how they carry themselves. There's elegance in that restraint, like the calm before a storm that never comes, or the way a mountain doesn't need to roar to be felt. There's something you need to know. The people who seem quiet, reserved, hard to read, they're often the ones who feel the deepest, love the longest, and carry others silently, without need for recognition. They don't make scenes, they make space. And in a world addicted to noise, that kind of presence is unforgettable. They won't tell you they're rare. They'll just be rare, and you'll feel it. One winter morning, snow still clinging to bare branches, he met someone new. They sat in silence for minutes before either spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because the space itself was enough. And when she finally looked at him and whispered, "You don't try to impress me," he said simply, "Why would I? I'm not trying to impress myself either." She smiled, and in that moment, everything unnecessary vanished. No performance, no strategy, just presence. You see, introverts don't captivate with charm. They captivate with truth, not the loud kind, but the kind that sits with you long after they've left the room, like the scent of rain on warm earth, like the way silence can feel more intimate than words, like the moment you realize you've stopped needing to be entertained because you feel understood. As the sun disappears behind the hill, the lake returns to stillness. He stays a few minutes longer, not waiting for anything, just being. The wind brushes past, the trees don't resist, they sway. And maybe that's the final metaphor. The most irresistible ones are not those who chase the storm, but those who become the weather, quiet, unmoving, and deeply, undeniably felt. not for what they do, but for who they are when no one is watching. And night settles. The stars blink into place one by one like truths returning after noise fades. He walks home slowly, not because he's tired, but because there's no rush. Because some evenings, even the act of walking becomes meditation. No destination, just presence. The streets are quieter now, the city exhales, and in this hush, a subtle awareness rises. That life isn't something you conquer, it's something you carry, with grace, with patience, with breath. He thinks of all the times he tried to shape himself into someone louder, faster, more visible, and how every time he felt further from himself. But not anymore. Now there's no need to convince anyone, not even himself. Because the truth is simple. Some men speak through silence, through steadiness, through restraint, and those are the ones you remember. Not because they begged to be remembered, but because they couldn't be forgotten. Attraction, you see, is not about catching attention. It's about resting into being. The world is filled with performers, but every now and then you meet someone who's not acting, just being. Not editing themselves in real time, not bending to be liked, just offering you the full, still presence of someone who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove. That's not arrogance. That's peace, and peace is rare, which is why it feels like beauty when you find it in a human form. He unlocks his door. The apartment is dark, quiet, but not lonely. There's a book on the table, a pot of tea still warm, the scent of sandalwood, and for a long moment he just stands there, watching his breath fog the window, watching the city blink below. No words, no story, just isness. And maybe that's where attraction truly begins, not in performance, but in presence, not in grand gestures, but in the courage to be alone, fully alive, and still whole. You will not hear their voice in every room, but when you do, it echoes, not loudly, but deeply. You will not see them everywhere, but once you do, you start seeing them in everyone who doesn't measure up. You will not always understand them, but you will feel something ancient and familiar in their stillness, like the ocean, like the moon, like a truth you once knew before the noise began. And long after they've gone, you'll remember the silence they left behind, not as emptiness, but as presence, still intact, still whole, still echoing inside you, long after the world goes back to sleep. There's a Japanese concept, yugen. It means a profound, mysterious sense of the beauty of the universe and the sad, delicate awareness of its impermanence. He doesn't know that word, but he lives it. In the way he watches the season change, not as events to document, but as teachers. In the way he lets people leave now without clinging, without bitterness. Just a quiet thank you for what was shared. In the way he's no longer afraid to be misunderstood. Some things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be felt. Like music, like grief, like love, unspoken. He doesn't rush to be known anymore because the ones who are meant to understand will feel him long before they figure him out. And if you've ever been told you're too quiet, too serious, too intense, maybe you were never too much. Maybe the world was just too noisy to notice your depth, but someone will. And when they do, they will not look away because something in you will feel like home, not loud, not dazzling, but safe, vast, still. One last moment. The flame in his room flickers low. Outside, the city pulses, unaware, but inside, there's only stillness. He sips his tea, breathes in, breathes out, and the world for a moment feels whole. No applause, no explanation, just a man alone, and finally enough. Like the moon, he doesn't speak. He only reflects the light, and in that reflection, some will see mystery, some will see power, but the rare few will simply see him.